Hello and welcome to Savage Universe on Thursdays. I am J-M. We're back and we have a special guest. I have a special guest. Excuse me. Tracy Sizemore of the Han Cluster. Tracy, welcome back to Savage Universe.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I am really glad to have you here. The reason we are doing this, we're actually going to be looking for the next 4 weeks. We're going to be looking at sci-fi aces and swag authors and contributors because the Science Fiction Companion is live on Kickstarter. I will have a link here shortly, but I wanted to just Tracy, you're working on the Han Cluster, and why don't you give us an overview? Let's start there. For people who somehow missed our last wonderful stream where we got to hang out and talk about this beautiful setting that I have a stack of money sitting like right here, just waiting for somewhere to go. Tell us about the Han Cluster.
Well, I sort of the one line pitch that I've sort of developed for it that I think is pretty accurate, and I think most people who have played it agree with me, is Han Cluster is Dune meets Ted Lasso. So it's an optimistic sci-fi setting. That doesn't necessarily mean, like in the show Ted Lasso, that there's an absence of conflict or an absence of problems to solve, but there's a decided sort of optimistic slant to how society views things and how we sort of overcome our problems and sort of look to the future and so how do we move on from here, right? So it's a world in which you want to preserve what you have rather than restore what you've lost, right? So there's sort of that fundamental distance there. But if we get into the weeds a little bit, it is a sci-fi setting set 600 years in the future, sort of like we're assuming that the world today is kind of the world as it is today, but it's a lot different 600 years from now. Yeah. Number one, because attitudes have changed and we've solved some of society's little hiccupy problems that we still have hanging around. We've created some more different problems, and so we have, right? It's still human, right? It's a fundamentally human setting, and it really is about human connection and sort of exploring that collective consciousness of our species. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, there's not a whole lot of like alien interaction like in Star Trek. There's not like 100 million alien races that all look humanoid. The aliens in Han Cluster, and there are some, are way different, and they interact way differently.
They're not just humans with funny foreheads and ears.
No. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I
love Babylon 5 and Star Trek. Like this is my bread and butter right there. But
yes. But I was like, I took a different tact because I really wanted to concentrate on the human experience in the future, and also how we interact with aliens as a collective, rather than necessarily saying, they're just everywhere. They're all over the place. It's just something we've come accustomed to. It is not. And
they're still fundamentally alien.
Yes. And there's an existential threat in the Han Cluster. So what I call the yellow shift is sort of the basis of the plot point campaign for the Han Cluster, which I'm testing. I've tested a few times now, and I'm in the process of testing with 2 different groups as we speak. And I called it the yellow shift, and it's basically sort of like, first of all, there's an interdimensional kind of transhumanistic aspect to the Han Cluster, where we all have, everybody has the ability to sort of separate what I call their next ghosts from their bodies. And their next ghosts it's not like astral projection exactly, but it is kind of like that. You can draw those parallels because your body goes to sleep when you separate your next ghost, but your next ghost is not incorporeal, it's semi-corporeal, so it can still interact with the real world. And one of the couple things that make it different is all PCs are what I call next bonded together. Okay. And that happens after a collective sort of experience of trauma or connection or something like that. Nobody really knows how or why. They've not been able to sort of duplicate it intentionally. It just happens. But the entire PC group in the Han Cluster is next bonded together. And along with that, They can communicate freely between each other, no matter how far distant they are or on what planet they are or what obstacles are between them, which makes table talk an absolute thing in the Han cluster, meaning if you're not directly involved in the scene, you're still directly involved in the scene because you can always communicate with your next bonded friends. So even if you're on one planet and people are experiencing something on another planet, not only can you communicate with them, and it's freely encouraged to have table talk between those players, you can next ghost travel to them. So your next ghost can travel to the next ghost of somebody you're ex-bonded to, which allows you to participate in that scene, whether it be a fight, a negotiation, a hacking attempt, or whatever you want to do, right?
So it encourages not just splitting the party, but actually like the party can cooperate in a multi-pronged plan, which, let's be honest, players want to do anyway.
Yes.
And they want to create these elaborate plans where all of these different moving pieces all have to happen at the same point. But inevitably, it's the communication breakdown that causes the plan to break down.
Right. And the thing is, it all works until it doesn't work. Right. And the Han cluster, there are situations in which next bonds get a little iffy and communication gets a little sketchy. Right. Yeah. And that's when it starts to get really scary, because you're used to having this kind of connection, this ability to travel and do things and solve adventures in different ways than you're normally accustomed to solving them. But when it starts to not work, and it becomes a plot point, right? It becomes a thing in the setting that happens, and then you start to have to deal with that as well. And that's sort of an additional problem on top of our regular human problems. So the whole idea is that I'm creating adventures that explore this existential threat, that sort of embrace the next bond and the transhuman abilities that we've developed in the future. And the Jumpstart is a great example of that. So the Jumpstart is already out. It's on Drive-Thru-RPG, and it includes a no holds barred adventure that really is meant to introduce you to next bonding, the transhuman abilities associated with it, and jumping around to different places and different people to solve problems, right? It encourages you to look at adventures in a different way.
Yeah. Christian and Donald are in the chat, and they have been talking it up from the Gamehole Con experience that they ran.
Right.
And so they got to play in with you.
Yeah. Christian, I think, played in Trinity's Mustang, which is an adventure that I wrote a while back. And then Donald got to play in the Jumpstart, which was a phenomenal, fantastic session of gaming that I won't soon forget. And I think Donald sort of backs me up there. But it was amazing. I had amazing players, and I was able to really show off what the Han cluster is all about in both a narrative, a sort of thematic, and a crunchy kind of way. Like it went all the way into, how do you do combat like this, and how does it work? And wow, that is crazy inventive, and I get to do crazy things that I never thought I could do. Right?
That's awesome.
Without breaking the game. Right? That's the trick, is to make sure you can do all these things without like saying, well, this just solves this adventure. Right?
Right. Exactly.
It doesn't really. There's restrictions that make it fun.
So Armistice said the Jumpstart was also written so that it's easy to run. Ran it successfully a bunch. Not as well as Tracy, though. That was what I was going to ask. How difficult has it been to translate your view of the Han cluster and how things should play out to the material going out to players, and with the Jumpstart to the material going out to other GMs? Are you getting good feedback on that?
Absolutely, I am, but it is something that I struggle with every day, because I fret about things. This is just kind of what I do. It's my MO. I fret, and but at the same time, there's the feedback I've gotten from people who have run the Jumpstart has been very positive, meaning that they feel like they understand enough to run it and to feel comfortable doing it, right? Even if it's not the way I do it. I don't expect anybody to do it the way I do it, right?
Right.
But I want to make sure they have enough to go on that it makes it feel fun and like they read it and say, oh, I want to play this, right? Not just that I want to, read it or that I'm interested in the idea of it. No. I want to sit down with a group of players and play this game. That's my goal with any adventure that I write.
Right.
With the Han cluster, it's even more challenging because I'm trying to convey a theme. And that theme is connection. That theme is look at what we can do together, right? Without sacrificing drama, right? So that's tricky. And every day I struggle with it. Every day I sit there and I wonder, are people going to like this? Is my vision of the world so off and weird that people in general are not going to get it? So I really do struggle with it. And some of the art is reflective of what I want, but I'm not sure at all whether it's how people will react and whether they'll react in the same way that I do or interact with these pieces the same way I do.
I empathize with that, right? You have your passion project, and you can go back to it multiple times and go, this is great. This is like it was written for me.
Mm-hmm.
But when you put it out into the world,
people are different. Everybody's different, and everybody has their perspectives, and it's fascinating watching people react to it. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh wow, I didn't think of that, like how people might react to that particular thing. Like that is interesting, and that's all part of testing too, is to make sure that I cover the fact that is a legitimate response, right? And so it's tough, it's challenging, but it's also super rewarding, especially when I go to a con and people come back again and again to play this game, different adventures in the same setting. They're just waiting for the Kickstarter, and it's gonna come, but there's a lot yet to do.
This morning, when I was on behind the screen talking about the fact that I was going to have you on the show tonight, there were 3 or 4 people who were like, do we know when it's coming out? Like, I just got this pile of money that I'm waiting for. I'm like, I'll ask, but here's the thing. It's not gonna launch till it's ready. And Tracy's going to make sure that it's ready. So we just got to be patient.
I was just talking to Shane this morning, like it's ready when it's ready. It's done when it's done. And he says his response is literally word for word. He quotes, I said, it's done when it's done. He says, this is the way.
This is the way. Yeah.
This is the way. And he's absolutely right. And that's how I approach it is like, I'm not a perfectionist. I know better than that. But I know also that it needs time to cook, and it needs time to ferment, and it needs time to make sure that I'm getting it as best as I can make it. Because once it's out there, it's out there.
It's out there.
I can't change it. I can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Christian says one possible solution is basically blind play testing. I can say that Jackal's definitely benefited from blind play testing. I got a lot of feedback, and they sacrificed a lot of my sacred cows. I was like, but I want to hold on to this sacred cow, and the game is better for it.
Yep, it is. It is.
Well, hello to Civil Savage, who just jumped on there, and to everyone who is in the chat. Good to see all of you. It's good to be back on a Thursday night hanging out with you all. We're here because, again, as I mentioned at the start, we're here because we're celebrating
Sci-Fi Companion.
The Sci-Fi Companion. And I'm going to put a link to that here in the show notes. It is approaching $200,000.
Yeah, it's great.
And with 28 days to go, it looks so good. And I've got Donald here in the chat, and both Donald and myself, in addition to a number of others, contributed to the iconic adventures that are going to be shown off here in the Sci-Fi Science Fiction Companion. It's part of everything at the Sci-Fi Digital Bundle and print bundles. So I wrote a adventure called The Emergency Evac, which is inspired by games like BattleTech. And Tracy and I are actually going to talk about what we're most excited about with the Science Fiction Companion coming out. And we've got a great lineup of people who are contributors and aces and swag authors who are coming on to talk about what they're excited about for the science fiction companion. And Donald wrote the one that is based on, inspired by aliens. The Captain is Dead. I'm really looking forward to playing that one as well.
Yeah, and Daryl wrote the Star Trek sort of esque one.
Right? And Christopher Landauer is doing the Dune one, and one of the Savage Rifts guys is doing one. I think he's doing the Blade Runner one. I want to say. Let's see here if I got that right. No, he's doing the Star Wars one. Brian Reeves is doing the Cyberpunk one. Yes. So Donald may or may not be working on his right now. So question, is the Han cluster setting getting will it be compatible with the science fiction companion?
So the plan is, and the thing is, this is a complicated question, right? Because a lot of people don't want to have to buy the Sci-Fi Companion to play an Ace licensed game, right? And I understand that. I totally get it. However, here's the thing, right? Very smart people have already done the work. And it's official, and it's like, this is how the Suede is going to work with sci-fi, right? So they've already established a lot of these setting rules and a lot of the things that the way the things are going to work. So why would I snub that, right? Why would I say,
why reinvent the wheel?
To heck with it, I'm going to do my own thing, unless those things aren't compatible with what I'm trying to do. And that's legit too, right? So it is going to be compatible with the Sci-Fi Companion, but I'm going to have my own twists on it and my own sort of caveats and setting rules on top of that, right? So, for example, one of the things that will be different, I'm pretty sure, than what's coming in the Sci-Fi Companion is the way I do my ghosted machines, what I call ghosted machines, which are machines that have manifested next ghosts, right? So not just humans have manifested next ghosts and have these transhuman abilities, but some machines have too. And nobody knows how or when a machine is going to ghost, but they have sapience, human type intelligence, right? Because they're formatively influenced by humans. Now, there's many ways you could do that, including just porting directly robots from the Sci-Fi Companion over. But I'm not going to do it that way, I don't think. I'm going to do my own kind of thing with that. It's going to be heavily influenced by what the Sci-Fi Companion did, of course. I'll read it and I'll say, oh, that's how they're doing that. Great. I'll just do a little tweak here, and this is how I'm going to do this. But I'm trying to cleave to it as much as I can. Again, because a lot of smart people have already done the work, and it's official. It's common. This is what's going to be on everybody's shelf, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to be as compatible as possible with what Suede does.
Yeah.
And
stand on the shoulders of giants, so we can see a little further.
Exactly. But that said, for the most part, you won't really need the Sci-Fi Companion if you don't really want it, right? You will be able to play Han Cluster without the Sci-Fi Companion. You can do it. Yeah. It's not like it's like integral, like you need it, right? But it will include setting rules and stuff that are there in the companion that will make things a lot easier and more more sort of common, and this is how it works, rather than sort of either making your stuff up, right? Yeah. How does atmosphere work? How does gravity work, right? These are simple rules that take like this long to explain, but they're all in the Sci-Fi Companion, and it's right there.
Yeah, and it's far easier to say, see the science fiction companion.
Exactly.
Right? That's 4 words as opposed to here's how gravity works.
Yes, right. Or to reinvent the wheel, right? Mm-hmm. That said, there are things that as an Ace licensee I can copy from the Sci-Fi Companion, and I can copy from Suede, but so there's some things that I can't, and there's some things that I have to ask permission to get. Right. Yeah. So, and I'll be doing that. I'll be going through what I need to do and see what I can negotiate there. But just as an Ace licensee without any negotiation, I can still take stat blocks. I can still take starships from the Sci-Fi Companion
Mm-hmm.
and stick them in the Han cluster, right?
Yeah.
I can make my own starships based on the Sci-Fi Companion, stick them in the Han cluster, and not really have to explain how I made them, right?
Yeah.
So that's still all very viable and useful without the Sci-Fi Companion. But yes, as a general, too long didn't read answer, it will be compatible with the Sci-Fi Companion.
Awesome. So let's talk about it a little bit, and then we'll show off some art from the Han cluster. What are you? So we've gotten a chance to get our hands on a tasty preview copy.
We have,
of
and
the
I've been
science
play
fiction.
testing some stuff too. So I've got my hands in it a little bit.
So what would you like to share? Like what is something that really excites you that's coming out in the companion, and what's something that you're just let's do it as a GM. What are you excited about having access to? And then as a player, what are you excited about having access to?
Okay, so as a GM, I'm most excited about what is currently being called dramatic vehicle battles. And basically, it's a table-based version of space combat, right? Now, it's not done yet, and there's going to be more tweaks to it. So I don't want to spoil too much, because it's not my place to do that. But the idea here is that we take away a little bit of the granularity and the crunchiness of space combat as it was in the original Sci-Fi Companion. That stuff is still there. Like, vehicular weapons still do their damage. They still have range. They still do all their stuff. But they are also sort of separated into different classes. Like, lighter weapons are class 1, and heavier, more dangerous weapons are class 3, etc. Right? And the ships are sort of separated into those kinds of things too. And then you start to compare classes, and there's a sort of table along with some rolls that sort of determine outcomes based on those things, rather than having to actually roll a lot of dice, add up the damage, compare it to toughness, figure out how shields work, figure out how sloped armor affects it, all that other stuff, which is fun if you want to go there, right? And it's still all there. It's all there.
Yeah.
But this way, it allows you to really simplify it and make it fast, furious, and fun, in a way that is also still making available things like tests and support and all those things that you're used to having, right? So I'm very excited about that, because especially in the Han cluster, there's times when I want to be granular. There's times when I really want to dive in and get really specific and get into tactical combat, like I did with the jump start at Gamehole Con and stuff like that. But there's also times when I'm like, we're going to have a space fight here, and we kind of want to get through this in 10 minutes rather than spend 30 minutes on it. You know? And then we can have an outcome that's narratively interesting, that has some roles involved, and that has some randomization happening based on skills that you have and edges that you have, but it resolves much, much faster. And I think that's what I'm most excited about as a GM.
Well, and let's pause here real quick, because we've got a great comment that makes me want to explain why we're talking about the Science Fiction Companion on the Savage Universe stream. So somebody on Facebook has said, hey, please add the unstoppable edge to this book. And I love the unstoppable edge. And when I'm a GM, when I'm a player and John Doom pulls out the unstoppable edge, it makes me want to pull what little hair I have out. This is all from John Doom's and Ronnie's games with Savage World or with Unstoppable in it. But this is a great piece of feedback, and what we're getting set up behind the scenes, and by the end of these, this celebration of science fiction, we'll have concrete details for you. We want all of our swag and fan and ace licensees to be part of the feedback process. We want you guys to be able to play with sections and rules from the Science Fiction Companion and give us your feedback, so that we're going to do a pretty robust feedback process. We're still working on all the details on that, but we want our licensees to be able to speak into this process, because we know there's a lot of great science fiction products out there, and you guys have designed a lot of things. Now, that's not saying that just because you've designed it X way that we're going to incorporate it that way, but we want to hear your feedback on the stuff that is written and maybe give some suggestions and thoughts on pushing back on this, on the design process. So like all of the companions, we're going to be opening up sections to feedback and response, and we're really looking forward to engaging with the licensees, because you guys are the ones who have either already covered some of this design space, or B, the ones that are going to go out and take the companion and design new things.
Yep.
So I mean, this is a little self-serving, but my favorite new section that I've read.
Yes, what's your favorite?
Is the mecha, is the walker stuff. They did a great job designing it. Like, so one of the things I love about Savage Worlds is what I call kind of the combat dial on the telescope. I can zoom in to, hey, we're going to put cards and minis on the table. I can zoom out a little bit and do theater of the mind. I can pull back a little farther and do a quick encounter. I've got the mass combat, and it all kind of seamlessly shifts when I zoom in and out. And I love that the walkers have that same kind of feel. You're in a walker, you're in a giant mecha suit with lasers and missiles and, you know, all of the fun things that you want out of a giant suit of robotic armor.
Mm-hmm.
And you can very easily get out and be immediately into the player scale as well. And all of these rules that I just mentioned also work while you are in your walkers. So it's not like walkers are this, you know, weird subsystem that kind of doesn't really interact. You know, you've got to have kind of a separate, and we've seen some design space where they say, hey, when you go to do this, use this complete separate set of rules.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I love how seamless it is.
I know that Daryl. Because Daryl is one of my best friends, so I spend a lot of time with him, and we talk a lot. And I know he's been spending a lot of time working on the various vehicles, robots, walkers, you know, all that stuff to sort of bring it into sort of a consistent thing. So you're not using, like you say, separate subsystems to adjudicate walkers versus combat with people, or you know, the vehicular rules that I was talking about, those dramatic vehicular encounters work just as easily for starship battles as they do for walker battles, or for, you know, vehicles on land, you know, all that other stuff. It all works, and part of the effort that has gone into the Sci-Fi Companion and why it's taken so long is to get all these things kind of consistent in a way that is remaining fast, furious, and fun, and covering the huge breadth of what sci-fi is and the different kind of genres, subgenres there are out there. Like they're doing their best to cover everything from transhumanism to Star Wars to hard sci-fi to Star Trek, and that's a tall order. Really,
and I think that's why we have the iconic adventures, right? Because we want to show off that the companion can do all of these. So yeah, I agree. There's a lot of anime and manga which mixes the medieval fantasy with the giant mecha walkers. I think of Visions of Escaflowne, one of my favorites. I don't know why that world just captured me the way it did, but like I could run that with a science fiction companion.
Yep.
So John Doom says, so while walkers are doing their things, you can nuke it from orbit in your capital ship. Yes. Or if you're the the lone sniper out in the field and the walker sees you, you might want that meep sign like Wile E. Coyote. Yes. Because there is a difference of scale here. There's a difference in the rules, the way they
You're not going to take out your capital ship with your little pulse pistol.
That's right. No, sadly, no matter how well you roll.
Sadly, no matter how much you ace, it's just.
That's right. That's right. It's not going to happen. Yes, just like in Savage Rifts, the difference between mega damage and regular damage.
Yes.
It is the only way to be sure. Curse of Yig, that's a great system and a great, like, I love the layout and the art for Fragged Empire. But I think you're gonna love it in Savage Worlds. So, what about as a player, Tracy? What from the companion really kind of grabbed your interest?
Well, I think what I've been most concerned about, both as a player and a GM, is the disparity. And this is something they're still working on, right? Still kind of tweaking, trying to figure this out and how to express it. It's not so much what rules to do for it, but how to express it so that a GM knows what to do, right? And that is the logistics problem of sci-fi, meaning that these ships out there cost millions of credits, right? So you salvage a ship or you steal a ship, and all of a sudden you're awash in millions of credits. You can just go buy whatever you want. You can that's what a lot of the players kind of view, kind of like it's like it gets a little weird and it gets a little tricky. Because as a player and a GM, I kind of want the ships to be that expensive. I want them to be special, and I want them to be like, okay, this is out of your price range as a novice character. You have to go on an adventure to get that ship, right? And a lot of that stuff is built into the Han cluster. Like, you want your first ship, you're not just going to go buy it because it's going to be 2 million credits. You got to go on an adventure to go get it. And I've got several adventures in the book that allow you to get a big major asset like that, not just a starship, but something else. It could be whatever plot MacGuffin or whatever. It could be a stealth system for your starship, which are not cheap either, right? So those things have to be adventure driven, or at least you mostly want them to be adventure driven, right?
I mean, like in Lost Colony, right? You don't start with a ship, but that very first, one of the very first adventures in the plot point campaign is, and now.
Yes.
As your reward, you get the ship, and here are all the issues that it has.
And it's terrible, right? It's a fixer-upper.
It's definitely a fixer-upper.
In Han Cluster, because just the way I am, you earn the ship through adventure. First, you play through 2 where you don't have one. And then the first opportunity to get one is your third act in the plot point campaign, and it's really cool. I think it's something that a lot of sort of adventures and campaigns don't do and don't think about like this. But when you start to think about like, okay, so you've earned this, and because you've built relationships, because you've created something with your deeds, you now have access to some crazy stuff out there. But it's not a gimme, right? It's also something, there's an adventure along with getting this stuff. And that's what's fun. That's what makes it fun, right? Not just accounting and bookkeeping. So what I'm kind of excited, and that brings me to the point, which what I'm excited about is that Shane and company have done a lot of work to try to express how to handle those logistics in sci-fi, especially because the disparity of what a pulse pistol costs or what a semi-automatic, plasma rifle costs versus what a ship costs is so ridiculous that it's not really like that in almost any other genre. And you have to have a way to handle it. Now there's a wealth system. You could use that. That's legit. But I prefer to look at it more in terms of what kind of adventures do you need to go on to get the crazy stuff, because that's what's fun. That's what we're here for. Well,
I mean, and it goes back to, it goes back even to the roots of the hobby, right? Well, we all want our castle. Well, cool. You're not getting that for a while. But if you work really hard, someday you're going to have your own castle. And when you get one, it feels awesome.
Yes, it feels like an accomplishment, and you want to hang on to it. Like, okay, I got my ship. Now I got 4 wounds on my ship. It's going to cost me a pretty penny to fix those wounds. Uh-oh. Now I have to go on an adventure to figure out how to get those wounds fixed. Like in exchange for something else or whatever. Right?
Yeah, like either old school Traveler, or let's even go back to Star Wars. Han Solo, not Cluster. Right. Sure. He owed so much money on his ship because I always feel like Han Solo is the point of view character, because like, I'm not a farm boy. I don't have special mind powers. but I do have a janky car.
Uh-huh.
And I do have debts on that car. So
Yes.
yeah, I really can get behind this guy who just wants to like make the next payment on his used car.
Yes, or get enough money for repairs or whatever
Yeah.
he needs to do, right?
Yeah.
And that's the adventure. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here to
exactly.
And
it,
so
and
I
it
think
shouldn't be a grind. It should be something that we want to engage in.
Right, unless you want to do the bookkeeping thing, right?
Yeah.
But even then, like in sci-fi, it gets a little. It's not a lot of fun to really go into that sort of minutia. So it's more fun to think of it and to sort of buy into the fact that, okay, the big stuff, the really big stuff is adventure stuff. The small stuff, like and then in between, you get a reward for 50,000 credits. Great, awesome. I can go on a spending spree. I can do all my shopping and do all my crazy stuff and buy my components for my ships and all that stuff. That's great too. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it really comes down to it, like if you were rich, if you had salvaged ships that were worth 20 million credits, then you have to have a reason to go on these adventures anyway. So why are we spending time with the money?
Exactly.
So it's tricky. It's a really tricky problem. They're really working on it, and what they've got written down is not so much a rule set as a state of mind, and I think that's important. That's important.
So let's wrap up the last little bit of our time together, talking, showing off some new art, because who doesn't love new art? And
I do.
I mean, I'm really excited to show these off. So I'm going to throw these up on the stage, and I'm going to let you walk us through each piece and tell us what we're looking at here.
All righty. Okay, so this I've been holding off sort of showing to people because the first piece I did was wrong. It was completely my fault. It had nothing to do with the artist, nothing to do with anybody, any art direction or anything. It was my bad, right? It was something I had to see before I understood. This is Haley Preston.
Yes, I love this piece.
Haley Preston is a key NPC in the Plot Point campaign. And she was the first ever ghosted machine. And when you start the Plot Point campaign, she is 70 years old, and yet she still looks like sort of a 12, 13-year-old robot. Right. And because she's formatively influenced by humans, she still has a sort of childlike demeanor to her too, despite being 70 years old, having gone through quite a life to get there and being quite wise at the same time. So it's really fun for me to play her because I get to play that sort of childlike optimism alongside a very practical wisdom that she sort of throws out there the minute somebody starts to discount her because of the way she looks, right? Yeah. So I don't want to give up too much, except if you can zoom in, I don't know if you can, but on her shirt, and this is my favorite part of Haley's
yes, the
live robot walking, and then established 2584. So that's when Haley ghosted, and that's the first time any machine in the Han cluster ever ghosted.
And when you say ghosted, it's not just become self-aware, but it's also manifested
a next ghost. Yes. So I think that's cool. She captures my imagination in many different ways, and I love her. And this is one of those aspects of the setting where I'm like, is anybody else going to care about this? Maybe not, but I care. And Haley's pretty cool. Yeah. So if I know I can play her well, but I don't know how other people will play her and how other people will react to her. I think that's going to be fascinating to find out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, John Doom recognized her immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the new map.
Yes, this is the map of the Han cluster. So I did this myself. So nobody else did this but me. But I created the map of all the planets and all the sort of major locations, all the sort of major nebulae, and all the hazards and all the places that you can go within this basically 100 spherical sort of 100 light year area of what the Han cluster is, right? So, and maps are critical. Maps are lovely. People love maps, right? Because then they can say, well, we're here. It takes us this long to get here. We need to go this direction, and we need to go fast. So we're going to go through this dangerous area here, right? Like, it's gorgeous. It's perfect for role playing. And anybody who does role playing games should really think about how many maps you have, not only for tactical combat purposes, but also for your setting.
This is for Tracy's Han cluster that is coming out.
Yes.
I assume not all Facebook users are the same Facebook user.
No, I assume. But yeah, we're talking about my setting now. This one is, so there's, like I said, the yellow shift.
I was going to say, this gives us a little bit of a hint of the yellow shift.
It gives you a little bit of a hint. So the people on the left side of this one are from the yellow band, which is sort of a group that's been corrupted, especially by the yellow shift, right? So they have powers that other people don't have. And their next ghosts are yellow. Yep. And that's, again, why the yellow shift is called the yellow shift, because everybody's next ghost is blue. But as at the beginning of the plot point campaign, you start to realize that they're slowly starting to shift toward yellow. So you start to see blue-green in people's next ghosts and stuff. And there's effects that are happening on top of that I won't spoil. But I think it's pretty neat and pretty interesting, and it really does reinforce the theme of the Han cluster. Yeah. But these are the yellow shifted yellow band members who are sort of fighting a couple of the archetype heroes. And their guns, or their next weapons are yellow, as opposed to the heroes' next weapons, which are blue. Blue. Yep. Yeah.
We have a lot of people saying that they're not necessarily usually sold on other sci-fi settings or other people's settings, but everybody wants the Han cluster. I agree.
I'm excited.
Very excited about this.
So this is on the planet Tract, which is a desert planet, and it's the first planet that any kind of Earth immigrants usually stop at in the Han cluster, because they're not generally welcome on the sort of paradise main planet, the cradle of Han cluster civilization called Edenic. They stop at Tract first. And these are Earth immigrants who have come off an 18-month journey from Earth, and the sun of Tract is sort of blinding them. And a couple of one of our archetypes is greeting one of the kids that's coming off. And then in the foreground on the right side, you see the man named Dispatch, who is on Tract, and his sort of goal is to help Earther immigrants adjust to the Han cluster. So he's just there to give them jobs, give them places to stay, to sort of give them a good start in the Han cluster on Tract.
Awesome.
This is a scene from Earth. So Earth is still out there, and it's super crowded. Billions of people live there. I think 10 billion at this point. And they're concentrated into these massive population centers. And so this is an example of what some of those population centers look like. In the foreground on the left side, there's an ad bot.
I love the ad bot.
It's trying to tempt our archetype Cicada into buying a new hair accessory. And Cicada's tempted, and she's looking and she's grasping for it, but Crack is sort of pulling her along and say, don't get involved. Don't engage. So he's trying to pull her away from it. So it's just this sort of fun scene on Earth.
Oh yeah, I love this. I think we showed this off the last time, and it's one of the images that sticks in my head.
This is another sort of critical aspect or critical NPC of the plot point campaign, and her name is Kari Soul. She's young. She's like 26 years old, and when you first encounter her, she's a lieutenant on a trade ship called the Raster, one of the only ships that goes between Earth and the Han cluster. And you're there to help rescue the Raster because it's under siege by a consortium of pirates. And Kari is sort of she becomes de facto captain of the Raster because the real captain is heavily injured. And the PCs are there to sort of advise her and to help her and to do some of the really hard stuff, while she is trying to get her crew together and get them all working together and what's left of them, and try to get her ship rescued away from the pirates. And so she becomes not only a critical PC or NPC of the Han cluster, but also somebody hopefully meaningful to the PCs as the plot point carries forward. And I think in my games that's true. What happens in other people's games?
Yeah, from what I've heard, the NPCs, how they're written and how they're woven into the story has been one of the highlights of people who have been playing in your campaigns.
Oh, good. So see, the challenge there is to make sure the NPCs don't upstage the PCs, right?
It's very difficult.
That's very, very important to me.
Yeah.
And yet I want PCs that you care about and that you engage with and that you find funny and interesting or really do care enough about to like that it makes a difference to you.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to me to have PCs that are fleshed out, interesting, fun, and engaging without them taking over for the PCs.
Yeah.
Right. So that's part of the challenge too. This is Madeline Yule. So at the beginning of the plot point campaign, she is on a transport ship with the PCs, and you're not next bonded together yet. But in Act 1, you become next bonded by the end. Madeline is sort of caught up with you, and she becomes next bonded as well. So there's one NPC that becomes next bonded with the party, and she sort of, she does her own thing. She's not going to be part of your group. She's a student from Edenic. She's got her own, her own goals and her own sort of agenda and her own thing. And yet she's super interested and engaging and wants to know what the PCs are doing. But she's off on track doing her own thing. So it's just one of those things like, it's an interesting device that the GM can use if they want. If they don't want, they can kind of ignore what Madeline does. But she gives you certain advantages because she's got the X-Bond with you. So there's inventive ways you can use her if you can convince her to help you.
Awesome. I love just going through this art and listening to you talk about it, by the way, Tracy.
I love this piece. This was Dimitar Spazov did this piece, and I love his work, and this is a next incursion. So this is two of our archetypes, Sirkahan and Cicada Lee. Cicada's in ghosted form, so she's been separated from her body. Her body is somewhere else.
And we saw her in the piece on Earth. She was the one interacting with the Adbot.
And so she is helping Circa fight off basically there's a Fantrol there and Spectres there. And the Spectres, the two small ones, their faces can change and they sort of will look part of their deal, and they incur a fear roll because of this, is they'll morph into what you look like as your angriest self, as your most just acerbic you, right? So it's to see you at your most just destructive and violent, and so that's the psychological impact of them. But they also have powers and stuff and dangerous stuff. So Cicada's in the process of entangling the Fantrol in the background. You can see sort of the next energy surrounding it if you look carefully, and then Circa has a next sword that she's using. Right now it's over her shoulder, so she's using it against the Fantrols, or the Spectres. This is another version of the Fantrol, the same thing we just saw in the scene. So this is sort of the character version of that. And again, yellow, ghosted, and there's more about them that I won't reveal because it's all in the plot point campaign. This is a Shock robot. So Shock, there's a colony of robots that's been built on a planet called Shock, where it's completely inhospitable to humans, and there's a whole plot point or adventure about the Shock. And they've been working on Shock for 200 years, and as far as anybody can tell, none of the robots on Shock have ever ghosted. But they have a colony, they do their own work, they're completely independent, and they basically provide Christum, which is the hyperdrive fuel for the Han cluster.
Nice. Christian had a question. How have you depicted that manifestation of that version of a character in the game? So I'm going to ask, which character are you talking about, Christian? We'll kind of come back around to it.
Yeah, I don't quite understand.
I don't know which character he's speaking of. So this is another Spectre.
Yeah, yeah. This is a Spectre from the scene. Yep, and they can morph their faces, and it's awful. This this is a
This
scene
is
for
Trinity's
I think
Mustang, right?
we might have shown this off before.
Yes.
Anybody who's played Trinity's Mustang knows this scene. And it's hopefully brings up feelings of, I don't know, joy, exhilaration. It does to me. And this is basically circa one of our archetype characters in the back of a P-51 Mustang,
Which I love.
giving a NPC called Trinity Quark a joyride daredevil stunt combo while they're being pursued by Wraith fighters in the background from security on Edenic who don't know what the heck is going on. But Trinity's Mustang is a very, very fun adventure, and it's unique, and it's an older one. Like, it's been around for a long time, for many years.
Awesome.
This is a yellow band diver. So this is she's ghosted, and she has powers, and her next ghost is yellow. Corrupted. She has powers that PCs don't have, that you can't have. It's like Deadlands having special abilities, right? It's the same thing. And so I love this piece. It's scary. It's beautiful. It's interesting. And it's one of the enemies of the Han cluster.
Yeah, I love it.
This is another yellow band member. So they've got their yellow glowing next ghost. They're carapaced right now, so their next ghost is in their body, and they're carrying a next weapon that is also yellow because they're corrupted.
I think that's the last picture that we had to show off.
Yep, and we have plenty more, but this is the stuff that really hasn't really been widely seen. So this is all new.
Well, when you are ready to announce the Kickstarter going live, we should have you back on and do another big.
Yes.
Probably before, because I know how stressful running Kickstarters are, and sort of taking it out in the midst.
Again, no time, and when it's done, it's done, right?
Yeah.
And so I'll Kickstart it when I've got it to the point where I feel like I'm very, very confident I've got most of it done, so that all I have to worry about is running the Kickstarter and not trying to finish the book at the same time.
Yes.
And art takes a while, so it'll be done when it's done.
Yeah, and like I said, love to have you back on to just get everyone hyped about backing and running and playing this. Griffin said these pictures just make them want to run Han cluster even more. They started smiling as soon as they saw the Trinity Mustang pic.
Awesome.
Just fantastic.
Well, thank you for having me, J-M. I really appreciate
pleasure.
it. I'm happy the Sci-Fi Companion is doing so well.
Yes, we put the link for that back in the show notes. It actually crossed 192 when we were on.
That's great. So great.
We're on here. Yeah, I'm so excited that this is doing so well. And again, we got 28 more days of this campaign. So if you haven't backed the Science Fiction Companion, follow the link in wherever you're watching and go check it out. Again, I say that because I love science fiction. Tracy and I have talked about how much we enjoy the genre. I'm actually getting ready. I'm doing a reread or a first-time read of the Dune saga after Dune. Like, I've read Dune over and over again.
Yeah.
But I always bounced off Messiah. Now I'm on God Emperor. And then I'm going to go back and read some of the Peter Hamilton Commonwealth novels, because I'm just in a science fiction sort of mood, and so this all hit right at the same time.
Daryl didn't like Messiah either, but I loved Messiah. Actually,
I think Messiah.
I think it's really great,
really great, especially because one, you can see the foundation that he's laying for God Emperor, but two, and I think we've all had this as GMs or authors, where you get to the end of the adventure and you're like, did you guys enjoy it? They're like, yeah, we enjoyed it because of X. And you're like, ooh, I was really going for Y. Okay. No, yeah. I don't think he rewrites Dune, because if you read Dune closely,
yes, it's all there.
Right. Like Liet Kynes' last thought is how his father told him how terrible it is for your people to fall into the hands of a hero.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's all there. But I love that he felt, all right, before I can get to Children of Dune, I really need to just lay out the fact that this is really what I was going for. And I think, but
Paul is not really the good guy. Like, he's just He's just not, right?
No,
And I love I love the plot to try to kill. I love the way Paul dies. I think that's
yes,
fascinating.
yeah,
And I love the setup and all the stuff around Princess Irulan, because that sets up what happens in the next novel.
yeah,
And I love Princess Irulan.
yeah. Well,
And
and
I feel for her because she's treated so badly in Dune Messiah. She's so badly. Right? But I
right.
love the good. I love
And
it.
in Dune, right? Like she
Yeah,
kind of gets the raw end of the deal, and then
she
in Children
does.
of Dune is wonderful. And then here's like you get to that sad part in Children of Dune, and I haven't read God Emperor. I know what happens in God Emperor, but the fact that like Leto's like, yeah, you're where you're at, Paul, because you didn't want to be the biggest bad guy the universe had ever seen for the good of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to do that, which is why I'm going to go beyond you. And I'm like, well, that doesn't bode well.
Yeah.
Like,
No, this is bad. This is all
yeah.
bad. But I still love it. It's a
The
really
books
weird.
came out in the 60s,
Yeah.
Civil Savage, 60s and 70s. You know, King
Right.
Kong is not the true monster. It's
Yeah.
really the humans who attack King Kong.
That's true. It's been out a while. I think we're
Yeah.
okay.
I think we're in spoiler alert territory. Yeah.
But I do love Dune. I love it.
I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. And it's also amazing to me, right, as you kind of work your way backwards through science fiction, because how many of us actually start on Triplanetary and then move forward, like the Lensman series, right? Because the Lensman series highly influences Dune,
Mhm.
and Dune highly influences Flash Gordon, and Flash Gordon highly influences Star Wars.
Mhm.
And as you kind of move, like if you, I kind of went in reverse, and so I'm like, oh, I can see how this thread now extends all the way to today. And thank you for providing me with a perfect segue, because next week I get to talk with Scott Woodward, who did the Flash Gordon
Awesome.
RPG, and we're going to be talking about Flash Gordon and science fiction and what he's looking forward to on the Sci-Fi Companion as well.
Awesome.
Yes, John Carter is in there as well. Yeah. So, all right, final question. Favorite book of Frank Herbert's Dune series? I know the fandom's kind of split on Brian Herbert's work. What's your favorite in the 6 and why?
The original.
Okay.
The original.
Same.
Because, and this is what the recent movie brought out so beautifully about the book and why I love it so much. It's not just a sci-fi story.
Yeah.
It is extraordinarily human and in a way spiritual too.
Yeah.
And so, and not just because of like what Paul is, or, you know, the Messiah aspects. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the transhumanism in Dune is fascinating.
Yeah.
Like the body control that the Bene Gesserit have, or the ability to think in the ways that the Mentats have, and the way doctors are, and the things that humans can do that are not based on technology, because they've sort of eschewed technology. They said Butlerian jihad, we don't want to have that happen again.
Yeah.
Like that was bad. So we're like, everything has grown up around the fact that they want to avoid AI or anything built in the form of a human mind, right?
Yeah.
And so they've trained themselves to become much more than we are now. And that captures my imagination, and it makes it into more than just technology. It makes it into a spiritual study of humanity. Yeah. And that's why I love Dune.
And I think that's for me the most interesting fact of Paul is not that he's this, not that he becomes this emperor, or even that he can necessarily, you know, is prescient and can see the future. But right, the thing that I feel like he never teases out as much as I want him to is the fact that he is really not only the pinnacle of the Bene Gesserit breeding program, right? So everything that the Bene Gesserits can do, the voice, the Bendu the muscle control,
The
but he's
muscle
also
control, all that.
he's also a mentat, right? They continually refer to him in Messiah
Yes.
as the mentat emperor, and I'm
Mhm.
like, but I want to know more about how that affected the Imperium. Okay, fair, not where you want to go with it, but that sets my imagination just ablaze.
Yeah, for me, when I was a kid, what really set my imagination was the Guild.
Yes.
Like, it's such a huge influence on me. Like the how much control they have, and how much control they don't have.
Yeah.
Right. And then the mystery of what Guild navigators look like. You never really know. You never really know. Right.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. Like, it's not just sci-fi technology. It's mystery. It's spiritual. It's more. It's more than that. And Dune did it in a way that very few others have.
Yeah.
And it just captures my imagination and gives me just enough to be like, I want more, and yet not enough to make it boring.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sort of trying to do that with the Han cluster too.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited to read and play through and run the Han cluster. Well, that brings us to the end of our Savage Universe stream. I know you've got to get out of here and you've got stuff planned for the rest of the evening. So
I have Han cluster to run.
You have Han cluster. I know one of your players is very excited about that.
There's some in my chat right now.
That's right. So until next week, go out and play some Savage Worlds. Go back check out the Science Fiction Companion, and we'll be back next week with Scott talking about Flash Gordon. I don't think I can convince Shane to license the Queen song, but we'll all be thinking about it as we're talking about Flash Gordon. So until next time, may all your dice ace. Have a good one.